Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very sorry for the delay that we had. So today we're starting the webinar series of this matchmaking event. Today with us, today we'll be presenting the SHAPES project. This is an international project funded by Horizon 2020, a European Union program. With us we have Bárbara Guerra, Sarlio, and Mr. Pedro Rocha. I hope you have a great presentation and a great discussion, and thank you again for being here. And I'll pass on the floor to Ms. Bárbara Guerra.
I will start. I don't think I can share my screen. Would you be able to allow me to do that?
Now you are able.
Okay. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for your invitation to join you in this matchmaking event. I will be addressing the technology in assisted living facilities by way of showing what we are doing exactly in the SHAPES project with respect to the use of digital solutions for supporting the older people. So I have here an outline, but it's not something that we need to go into big depth. I will just keep focusing on the digital solutions and technologies, but I would like just to have a certain context, provide an overview of SHAPES to allow you to understand exactly what we are doing in the project. So without further ado, going into SHAPES, we are talking about a EU-funded project that involves 36 European entities across Europe. And these entities are not only academia and RTOs, but are also industry and, of course, representatives of civil society organizations that deal with older persons or with disabled persons. And, of course, a large number of health and social care providers and services providers in Europe that are helping us to deploy these new solutions into the market. So SHAPES is basically a project that intends to answer to the challenges that are posed by the aging phenomenon and the increased lifespan of the European population. And it tries to do that by focusing specifically on how technological innovation and digital solutions can support this extended lifespans that we are now having, and allowing older people to maintain a more independent, healthy, and active lifestyle. So our answers will be basically translated into the results of the project, which include the integrated care platform, the digital solutions ecosystem that we'll be providing, also the socio-technical ecosystem model that we'll be discussing with respect to a new way of delivering integrated care to older persons and the network of key stakeholders that are going to be supporting it. A mechanism to allow the interaction between supply and demand, which we call SHAPES Marketplace. And finally, a set of recommendations that allow us to understand how this could be implemented across Europe. So since we are talking about a very complex issue, we also have different dimensions in SHAPES, and we have here captured some of them. I'm not going into detail about the ethical perspective because we have here a colleague, Sari, that is going to be addressing that. And I'm not also going to go into much detail about the large-scale pilots because Pedro is going to address this topic. But I will say that for us to actually provide the solutions through SHAPES, we have been implementing in parallel different perspectives that need to be accounted for. So the first one has to do with the understanding the life world of the older individuals. And to do that, we have produced a number of mini ethnographic studies that have captured the different contexts of how older people live across Europe. So we have taken into consideration not only their personal situation with respect to literacy or to economic income, but also what is their relation with their care provider and the health and care and social welfare system that is applicable in their own regions or countries. In parallel, we have also given voice to the institutions that provide or deliver integrated care in Europe. So we have tried to model the SHAPE socio-technical ecosystem, and we are now proceeding to validate the impact of each system that we have in place. And there are a number of variety of them across Europe to understand how they can be transformed through the SHAPE's vision into delivering improved and sustainable healthcare in Europe. Then, and this will be the area that I will be exploring with you, we have tried to understand which are the most relevant digital solutions and technologies that are today in place and could be developed in the future to support more active and healthy aging for the older persons. And finally, we have surrounded ourselves with an ecosystem of stakeholders that are allowing us to not only understand more about this phenomenon, but actually are going to be agents in the way we are trying to scale up all the results of the project after the project is over. And like I said, Pedro is going to be addressing this particular issue, but the main issue is that we have large-scale pilots across Europe that are divided into 7 pilot themes and involves 15 sites across Europe. And this will be sort of a first validation of all the digital solutions and the technical inputs that we are going to be deploying in the sites to ensure that we can extract what are the benefits and the impact that digital solutions and innovation technologies can have to optimize the lives of older individuals and to develop more sustainable health and care systems across Europe. So now focusing specifically on the digital solutions and technologies, as you can see in this bit of a mess in terms of an image, SHAPES has gathered a large number of different technologies. So we have health and well-being platforms, we have IoT platforms, we have chatbots, we have biometrics, facial recognitions, online tools for communication. We have apps that only focus on rehabilitation. We have decision support systems and predictive algorithms. So aside from all the different mobile applications that can actually help older individuals to self-manage their conditions and to promote healthier lifestyles, we also have partners that are doing data analytics using AI and machine learning algorithms to ensure that all the data that we collect within the pilots and within the use of these apps can then be transformed into actionable knowledge that can either inform research in the future or even improve us in terms of how we are able to understand more about these diseases, more about the aging phenomenon, and how we can also improve the health literacy of those that are using the solutions. So one of the things that you can see from here, and which makes a very big difference between SHAPES and other projects that develop this type of technologies, is that we have not focused on a single app or a single technology, providing it to ensure that we have the solution for the aging phenomenon and to ensure that older people can be more independent or autonomous for a longer period of time. What we have done is that we acknowledge that there are different solutions and technologies in place and that all people can have a saying on what they select to use. And what we have been able to do is to create a platform where these solutions combine, and you can have different solutions within the same context, providing the information that you require or the assistance you need for the different diseases and conditions that you may have. And this can be adjusted through time as your requirements or needs are changing too. So this is one of the key elements that SHAPES is different from the other projects. And the second one is that we do not see the digital solutions or the technologies as the answer to all the difficulties that older people are facing when they get older. We see them as an enabler and a facilitator that can ease and support different conditions, different diseases, and the different needs of older people, and also their caregivers, also the healthcare service providers that deliver the integrated care they need. But basically, these are, as I said, enablers and facilitators. They are not the solution per se, and these have to be integrated into a new model of delivering sustainable and affordable healthcare. So how did we try to install the digital solutions and to start developing these new people-centered, participatory digital solutions within Shapes? So one of the things that we have implemented is what we call the co-creation process. That basically is a common word, but we are doing this, as you can see here in the image for the timeline, we are doing this since the beginning of the project until the end. So basically what we are doing is that we are having a very strong, very close collaboration between the technology developers within Shapes and the end users in Shapes, also with the connection to a larger number of key stakeholders through the ecosystem that we are building around Shapes, to have them involved, as I said, in these different phases with respect to the creation and the deployment of the digital solutions. We have them understanding what are the digital solutions they need. Then they were involved in the co-design of these solutions. We had a number of interactions with the different users actually to understand whether or not the design mock-ups that we were doing met the requirements that they had. We are now concluding the co-experimentation phase or cycle that you have here, where they actually have had the opportunity to use the solutions and to try out and experiment with them to see if the prototypes were exactly what they needed and what they hoped for. And then we are going to start the deployment in the pilot sites, executing the pilots, and then having the possibility to evaluate those and the results of those to ensure that we now have results on how digital solutions can actually benefit the users by providing a higher quality of life as they age, and incorporating these results into the recommendations that Shapes is going to be making. Aside from this whole co-creation process, we have created a lot of work that has been supporting the development of the digital solutions. So based on the ethnographic studies that I mentioned before that were done to understand the life world of these older persons, we have created the Shapes personas. Basically, they are archetypes that represent users of the platform and allow us to understand exactly what are their needs, what are their ambitions, if they have or do not have technology literacy to use the different solutions. And basically, we can, based on this types of personas, we are able to understand more or less what are the boundaries of what we have to do in terms of providing technology to the older persons. Based on this, a lot of work has gone into defining the user requirements and the ethical requirements that are relevant to ensure that Shapes is something that observes and respects the rights and the liberties of all those involved, namely the older person. All these requirements were then translated into system specifications, and we also had a great effort in identifying the guidelines on user experience and user interfaces, not only for, let's say, products and technologies that had a web-based application or a mobile application, but also that were considered to be used by older individuals which have specific characteristics that we need to account for when develop these solutions, either in terms of cognitive impairments or in terms of mobility difficulties, or even dexterity in terms of using the buttons and the interfaces with the systems. So after we had this relevant basis, what we did was we provided different meetings between those that had the technologies and the end users. And we have made extensive presentation on both the solutions that we were presenting, but also all the devices that were involved in the solutions. And you have here a number of different IoT medical devices. You have robots, and you have also mobile applications that are used either to establish the health and well-being of a certain individual, or to provide analysis on whether anomalies are detected or if the situation with them requires further input. Based on this matchmaking that was made between the technologies and the needs from the users, then a set of use cases were developed for shapes. And I think we have like 25 or 26 different use cases, which basically are included within each of the 7 pilot themes that we have, and that they have specific scenarios. They take out on the work that has been done with the personas to understand exactly what are the outcomes that we expect from the digital solutions being presented here, and also the definition of KPIs to understand whether or not the outcomes that we expected are actually achievable, if they had been achieved, and how much of the impact they have made in the lives of those that are using the technologies. And afterwards, we started to make the adaptations that were required on the digital solutions to impact on the relevant use cases. In this slide, I am showing the e-care platform, which is developed by Edge. It is a health and well-being platform that allows the old persons to self-manage their health conditions and their specific diseases by monitoring their vitals and their well-being. And also the same platform can be used for patient remote monitoring, allowing healthcare institutions to have a very clear idea on the day-to-day basis of their own patients and how they evolved, in order for the care team that is accompanying them to be able to understand more of their daily lives and their routines, to understand whether or not they are adhering to the care plan that has been implemented with them, and to understand whether or not adjustments in treatment have to be implemented. So we took what was the e-care platform and we have adapted it to the use cases that were defined in shapes where this solution could be could have a supporting role. So you can see on the right, we not only have we given a shapes look and feel to the solution, but we have also made changes to ensure that different solutions could apply to the use case. So for example, if you look into the dashboard, the original dashboard in eCare has a number of functionalities being presented, from well-being to steps to sleep to nutrition. But in shapes, we have only used modules that would be feasible for specific use case, allowing other partners that also have the same functionalities and modules like we do to also contribute to the use cases. So, for example, we would be providing vitals like blood pressure or heart rate, or even information on body composition parameters. But for example, another partner will be developing the blood glucose monitoring, or would be providing information that has to do with air quality or with weather information. So basically what we have done here is that all the technologies that partners were providing, they were fine-tuned and adapted to fit as much as possible in the different use cases using just specific modules. And this was a very relevant way to work, because it basically transpires the philosophy of shapes by saying that we do not have one single solution that fits all, but that it is important for us to understand that the aggregation of the combination of the different digital solutions to actually provide the answer to a specific person with their specific conditions. So this is the work that is still ongoing. And as soon as we have all this in place, we will going to be starting phase 4 of the pilots with the actual deployment in the reference sites. So, and basically what happens then is that we have to focus on how we are going to scale up these technologies after the pilots. So these pilots function as a first validation. It basically, if we are lucky, is going to be developing the early adopters of the shapes technologies. And it's going to be like the key spokespersons on behalf of the shapes technologies in terms of their benefits and their positive impact in the lives of the older persons, in the lives of the caregivers, in the lives of the care professionals, and even in the delivery of integrated care by the different service providers that we have in shapes. But then we also have to ensure that we have the scaling up of these technologies. And what we have done here is more or less to use the same type of approach that we did with the development and transform it into a market perspective. So we are gathering not only the demand side, which has to do, and you can see here in the image in the left, the older individual, the care professionals, the service providers, but we are also evolving this into the shapes ecosystem to have third parties involved. But we also have the supply area where we have the digital solutions and services provided either by the shapes partners, either by third parties that go into the shapes through the open calls, which are 3 events that we have open. Now the second one is currently open. So I urge everyone that has digital solutions to apply for it, because you will be able to integrate your solutions into the shapes ecosystem, and luckily even within one of the pilots, and have a first validation of it, and which is open to the industry. By joining this supply and demand parts, we are going to be making this through a mechanism which is the Shapes Marketplace, which will be like sort of an entry point into the Shapes platform, where you not only have access to the different digital solutions that Shapes is going to be fostering, but also you will have access to informational resources that have to do with all the work that Shape is doing with respect to the models of integrated care, to the governance of health and social welfare across Europe, and even data that is being collected, the aggregated data, to support future research in this area. So we will be implementing what we call a market shaping type of strategy, where we involve all the stakeholders in the Shapes ecosystem to ensure that we are going to be contributing to a more competitive, available and fair marketplace, where solutions are provided at an affordable cost, and where we can subscribe into the security and the trustworthiness of these solutions in terms of ethical, due to the use of data protection and the compliance with data protection principles and regulations. So this is basically how we intend to further proceed with the scaling up of the technologies and improve the market by creating critical mass through the marketplace and achieving economies of scale in local systems to ensure that we are able to provide to the older persons the possibility to age in place, either at their homes or in assisted living facilities within their community. So this is basically what I wanted to say about technologies in Shapes. I don't know if anyone has a question.
Thank you so much for your amazing presentation, Ms. Barbara. We have a question in the chat. I don't know if you can see it. If not, I can read it out.
I will stop sharing so that I can actually see the chat.
If you wish, I can also read it to you.
Yes, please do so, while I try to remove. this?
The question is from Lynn, and the question is, do all existing technologies have open standards, or what is the experience with the integration of the existing products into the Shapes platform?
Okay, so we do have most of the systems involved having following standards and having open sources within their own midst. But we also have proprietary solutions that we try to incorporate as much as possible in Shapes. For that purpose, what we have built is a technological platform with connectors that allow these proprietary solutions to be employed within, for example, the pilots, and even gather data that can be collected into the Shapes platform and be used by the data analytics partners in their own solutions to provide actionable data regarding what they have been doing. So for those that do not have a more standardized way of interacting with different solutions that we have in Shapes, there is also the possibility to be integrated into the Shapes platform and act as a digital solution within the ecosystem as much as any other. So we are open to every type of solution in that respect, yes.
Thank you so much. I would ask if there are other questions that you want to ask directly to Ms. Fabreguerra. Okay. So if that's the case, so then we'll give the floor now to Ms. Sarlio. And thank you again very much. Sorry, I think the mic is off.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sari. I'm coming from Laurea University of Applied Sciences, and I'm the Shapes Ethics Manager. And my topics is about ethical and data protection frameworks in Shapes. And I will discuss these topics with you from three different kind of viewpoints. First, I will clarify you how is our ethics and data protection approach in Shapes, and then I will be presenting some tools which we are using in order to ensure the ethics and data protection regulation has been taken into account. And then in addition, I will also open up some key ethical and data protection challenges we have faced. But by the way, when I'm saying, talking about ethics, I include always also privacy and data protection in the ethics. Since, as you may know, the data protection has the background in EU fundamental rights, where there is the respect for privacy and family life and protection of personal data. So data protection is not only about GDPR, but it has the background in fundamental rights. And by that way, it's an ethical issue and a highly value-based issue. First, what we want to emphasize that we see that ethics is a component or a resource to create more value in Shapes. So this means that we do not see ethics as a risk or problem, but rather we see that if we are able to take into account the ethical aspects of smart and healthy aging and the technology and the organizational processes we create as part of the Shapes, then we can create more value. And when it comes to ethics and data protection dimensions in the Shapes project, so of course, in every research and development project, we have to take care of traditional research integrity, so different kind of permissions and so on. But when it comes to the Shapes kind of research and development and innovation project, even more important issue is that we can figure out that how are the ethical features of the Shapes solution, which we are creating and piloting during our project. And then when it comes to the pilots, pilots are very multifaceted from the viewpoint of ethics, because first there is a lot of issues related to the traditional research integrity. Then you have to validate different kind of ethical requirements as part of the pilot process. And last but not least, when you are operating in real-time settings, you have to ensure that all the mandatory ethical and data protection requirements are taken into account. Because, okay, pilot is pilot, but when we are processing, for example, personal data, we have to be fully compliant with the GDPR. So with this picture, I just want to communicate for you that how do we see the dimension from the viewpoint of time when we are talking about ethics. So basically in this project, our strongest viewpoint is in Shape's future use after the project. So we want to make, with the help of ethics, we want to ensure that our solutions will be sustainable ethically and from the legal point of view. But what we now do during the project phase, we define the ethical requirements for the Shapes project, as Barbara already mentioned. So that's part of the Shape methodology. Then we implement them ethical requirements as Shapes features. And then we, during the pilot, we validate also the ethical features of the solution. And when I'm talking about Shape solution, I'm talking about not only about technical platform and digital solutions, but I'm also talking about different kind of user processes and support which are needed. And then last but not least, also the governance and business and ecosystem models of Shape. So when it comes to the ethics and ethical requirements, all these three levels are important. So this was about the general approach of us related to the ethics. And now I will clarify more in detail what kind of tools we use to ensure the ethics and data protection topics. So this is a complicated picture. There's no need for you to get very much involved in it. But with this picture, I just want to communicate that when it comes to the ethics, it's really about governance, and we have to create good processes to ensure that all the ethics work which we have been doing and defining can then further be implemented as part of the work of the different kind of work packages. We have several ethical deliverables. They are written, they are on the left side of the picture. And then those deliverables provide us a lot of different kind of tools and templates. First, ethical and legal requirements, Shape's code of conduct. Then we also have a template for ethical requirement check of each deliverable. So we want to ensure that all the deliverables are aware of those ethical requirements and take them into account. Then related more to the general research integrity, we have also ethical self-assessment of all the work packages and pilots. Different kind of templates for data management. And then last but not least, privacy and data protection impact assessment templates are essential in our work to ensure that GDPR is taken into account. And then regarding the organizational arrangement, we have a dedicated work package 8 for ethics and privacy and data protection and fundamental rights protection. And But we also organize different kind of pilots and ethics meetings, because we see that the pilots are, because pilots are very complicated and the ethics has different kind of angles, we see that we have to provide as much as possible support for pilots to help them to take into account these ethical and data protection topics. And we organize different kind of workshops, and around the DP-AI processes, we have organized a lot of meetings with single pilot teams and sites. And then last but not least, we have also ethical advisory board meetings, typically twice a year. And when it comes to the organizational issues, so we have an ethics manager, and then we have a data protection manager, and of course, a strong team as part of our work package, which is dedicated on ethics. And then when it comes to the actual pilot, so each pilot site has nominated their own data protection officer. And then each pilot has also defined the data controllers and processors of personal data as part of the DP-AI process. Then when it comes to our, I can say, the most important tool to ensure that ethics and data protection is taken into account, that's our SHAPES ethical framework, a big deliverable in which we communicate first the different kinds of values and principles based on which our ethics work is created. So EU fundamental rights, ethics of care, bioethics, right of persons with disabilities, and capability approach. Then we have also adopted several guidelines which are relevant from the viewpoint of ethics, so sustainable development and customer logic and service design, and of course the ethics of artificial intelligence based on the EU papers on that. And when it comes to the privacy and data protection, the general data protection regulation inform us the main topics which are relevant from the viewpoint of ethical requirements. But also the cybersecurity and the resilience approach is relevant when we are talking about privacy and data protection. And then as part of our ethics work, already in the beginning of the project, we have identified several challenges related to ethics. Of course, the digital inclusion is among the most important topics, but also the challenges with the terminology we use when we are talking about older persons. So that's a deeply ethical issue, what kind of language we use, so that we are not stigmatizing people or hurting their dignity. And that's why, for example, in SHAPES, we have adopted the way to talk about older persons or older people instead of elderly people. And then the ethical framework of SHAPES then summarize all these different kind of aspects and documents which are mentioned here. They are summarized as different kind of ethical requirements. And those ethical requirements are all related both to technology, user processes, and business and governance model. And then we have also composed the SHAPES code of conduct based on those ethical requirements. And here are just examples of ethical requirements related first to technology. On the left-hand side, you can read. So last three of them are related to GDPR, but the previous ones are related other ethical values. For example, to create functionalities for the end users to switch on and switch off various sensors and services whenever they want to do it. So this is about the autonomy of people and the respect of their own decisions. Then in the middle, there are examples of ethical requirements which are related to the user processes or different kind of support processes. For example, the first one, which has the background on the conventions on the right of people with disabilities, which emphasize that we have to ensure that we understand that whether people are capable to consent, and we have to provide good support for them when they are using shapes. But also, and then last but not least, on the right-hand side, there are examples of ethical requirements which are related to the governance model or business model. For example, the importance to consider also the public sector as part of the governance model, because the well-being services has the background on EU fundamental rights, and therefore it's also a political issue. So these are examples. And when it comes to Shape's code of conduct, so Shape's code of conduct is in that code of conduct we are communicating more on a higher level the most important values, and there are, for example, the empowerment and inclusivity of end users and privacy and data security. There are altogether 7 topics in code of conduct. And as I mentioned earlier, we have different kind of tools to ensure that ethics is taken into account. This is just a snapshot of our ethical requirement check of each deliverable. So this means that each deliverable communicate to us that how they have taken into account those ethical topics which are defined in Shape's ethical framework. So this is an appendix in every deliverable in Shapes. And then I mentioned that the DPAI process is a very important and also time-consuming process, both for us in Work Package 8, but also for pilots. There we have provided different kind of templates to make that DPAI process much as easy as possible. And we have also different kind of data security documentation and data subject rights documents mentioned available. So these are compulsory documents to be on place when we are processing personal data. And then I mentioned that we also utilize ethical self-assessment for all the research we do in Shapes, starting with the ethnography with Barbara says, coming to different kind of other research topics, for example, related to Shapes governance. And this template is based on the EU self-assessment, but we have modified in such a way that it takes in the consideration more detailed guidelines for Shapes partners. Then my last slide is here. Well, if we say that, what are the most important challenges we have faced? We can say that when it comes to the ethics and our ethical framework, I think we have not faced very big challenges. Okay, we have faced the challenge with the terminology and so on, but we have solved them. But when it comes specific challenges, they are especially related to the privacy and data protection. And I believe that these are more or less joint challenges with all the projects which are dealing with healthcare services and personal data. First is the secondary use of personal data, because as Barbara already mentioned, that Shapes is also we are creating an ecosystem, and in that ecosystem there is also important that that and on the same platform that also the data can be used for research purposes and for political purposes to create a big picture about the well-being of older persons in EU. But as you may know, we are still lacking the union-wide legislation regarding the secondary use of personal data. We have the European Health Data Space movement and regulation proposal, and we hope that regulation might come in the effect or to be clarified even during our SAGE project. But still, this is a challenging situation, and we have to follow up very carefully what is happening here. And this is, of course, also related to the data management in general. Then the second topic, which is related to the special challenges with privacy and data protection, is the use of non-EU cloud services. The situation is that most of the big cloud services, there are many of them which has the background in United States, and even if these cloud services has the physical location in EU, there is still a risk because the service provider may be obligated to hand over the data to national authorities. So that's why we are avoiding non-EU cloud services and prefer those which has a background on EU countries. And then last but not least, as I already clarified about the DPAI process and say that this is time consuming, this is a challenge for also for pilots, because pilots are data controllers during the SAPES project, and there is a big responsibility for the data controllers regarding the processing of personal data. And this means that they have to be familiar with the data protection legislation. And okay, many of our pilots does not have the background in data protection. So this has been a learning situation also for them. But this was basically what I meant to discuss with you. And here, if you want to get involved with us and discuss topics and our approach, here are the contact information. So my name is Sari Sarlio, I'm the ethics manager, and then Juha-Matti Etuaro, he's also coming from Laurea, he's the data protection manager. And then you can find key deliverables of our ethics work on the SHAPES website. So here is the snapshot of this website. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sari, for this presentation. So we also have another question in the chat. I don't know if you can see it. The question, I'm not sure if it is for all speakers or for you specifically. If you'd like, I will read it out loud for all. The question is, what is your opinion on the United Nations decade of healthy aging, where all projects, providers, and organizations are invited to share their solutions on aging? What about what about the World Health Organization ICOPE app?
So shortly, both when we are talking about United Nations decade of healthy aging, so this is a very relevant issue for us as well as the World Health Organization. But I have to admit that I'm not familiar with ICOPE app yet. Have you, Barbara?
As I understand, the ICOPE app is provided by the World Health Organization to care service providers in order to allow them to go on a path of providing integrated care to the persons that they are providing care for. So basically, it is a set of tools like surveys that allow to characterize a specific individual, whether they have specific needs in terms of health or social care, and whether the organization itself has level itself up into a certain status where they can actually be providing integrated care, where all the different disciplines of health are integrated, where there is a multidisciplinary team providing this, where you can have information that have to do with income and other parallel systems to support actually this new model of integrated care. I think it's more about how you apply the model into an integrated care perspective in organizations than actually about the older persons and the aging process for those persons. It's not about other people empowerment in terms of taking part in the activity of decision making or the decision about their care, but actually more about how you can have better organizations in the delivery of integrated care.
Thank you. Do we have a raised hand from Carolina who made a question originally?
Yes, thank you. No terve, Sari, and good afternoon, Barbara. So I was the one that actually put that question on the chat, because when we are, for example, digital solutions provider here in Finland, and the way we handle pilots is something very unique per country. However, as we explored the United Nations Decade of Healthy Aging, and we found out about the ICOP app, it is a pilot, just like you mentioned, Barbara, which is focused on a more patient-centered developing of their cognition and abilities, and they're based on the Inter-I assessments. However, what's interesting to me, and the reason why I asked about ICOP, it's because they pilot globally their app in periods of time of, I believe that it's 1 year, 2 years, or 3. And what they're looking at is the scalability and how to replicate that system. So of course, it's not an app, for example, or a digital solution that's very complete. It's only like the basic assessment questions. But I was wondering, how do you see it as opposed to the way you're piloting your platform, Shapes?
Well, for one, we cannot have pilots in Shapes that take that long. That's one of the main differences. So we have, in this case, we even have a very large time frame for the project, because we have 4 years. And we have more or less 1.5 years dedicated to pilot activities, but for all the different phases of the pilot. So the actual deployment and use of the technologies in place will go through a period of up to 5 or 6 months to ensure that we get the data that we require. So it's a very short time frame in comparison to what we have in ICOP. So this is already one of the key issues. Then I think that the health organization, the World Health Organization, is using this system to ensure that institutions are able to implement these new integrated care models for the future, and they have the foundations to build upon those and to scale this up to a number of institutions. But what I think that it's missing here is that you have so much different levels of status between the different institutions around the world, that it is really difficult to have, like I said, one solution fits all as a road to ensure that integrated care can be applied more or less in the same way across Europe. That's not going to happen, because we have different frameworks, both legally and in terms of the systems that are in place. So even what we have understood by analyzing the life worlds of the older persons is that we have very different differences in terms of health literacy between an older person, for example, in Finland, where you are, and one in Portugal. So you will see that only that affects the way institutions also apply for the integrated care they provide to these persons, because the level or the audience that they are accustomed to and they have to deal with are very different in terms of the actual processes of interacting with them and involving them in the delivery of care. So we in Shapes do not think that you are going to be having just a solution that can be applied, but we do believe in best practices and methods to apply to those. And I think that the road showed by the ICOP app could be really relevant, and we are sure going to be focusing also on that model when we implement the one that we want to bring into Shapes. And of course, that we hope to also have this app within our marketplace, allowing people to go into the Shapes platform and download it and use it as much as possible.
Thank you. Kiitos.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we move on to our last speaker of today. So Mr. Pedro Rocha, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Did you see?
Yes, all good.
Okay. So thank you for the invitation on behalf of Shapes, but also from the University of Porto. I will continue, I will follow the Barbara's and Sari presentation, but focus more in the science role, or what is science is called to do in that innovation process like Shapes, especially the digital and technological innovation to the older people or the older adults. Usually, I think, I don't know if I will say some errors or not, but usually that scientific role is called like knowledge transfer or knowledge translation. And the difference between these two concepts, it's more or less the type of movement, while the transfer means something like exchange between science and other social and economical fields. The translation means a linear process that science has services to the innovation process. I will not explore this difference, but talking more about how in Shapes we are doing this transfer and translation, because in my opinion, and based on our experience, sometimes there is translation, the other times there is transferences of knowledge, and here in Shapes we are doing two different things, and I think that Barbara and Sari said this. One thing is using science evidences to design technology, not produce the hardwares or the softwares, but design digital and technical solutions based on scientific work. For example, when we talk about ethnographies to design personas, we are saying about put the scientific method, this is the ethnography, to design or to provide some information to the technology, to IT developers, in order to adapt or to rebuild the solution. The other role of this scientific field is to assess, to evaluate the technology based on scientific method, with scientific methods. I will explore this forward. The Shapes project have, I will say, have one work package just to put the science and the service to the innovation process, using a kind of methodology that is a pilot study. We call this work package like a Shapes Pan-European pilot campaign. A pilot study, it's a large-scale pilot study that happens, that are deploying in 15 pilot, 11 European countries, and using each pilot activity or each pilot team working with the cycles of co-creation and co-design activities, like Sari, like Barbara said. We start with the co-creation and the co-design, and then we will co-experiment and deploy the new solutions in different stage. I mean, in the controlled environment and the real life environment. In this pilot campaign, we are expecting that we will integrate. Now we will pilot the solutions at least with the 2,000 people. And these 2,000 people, the measure is older adults, but there is also caregivers, formal caregivers, and formal, I mean, care professionals, and informal caregivers like a spouse or a son or a grandchild. In 15 pilot sites in 11 European countries, like I said. This pilot campaign will engage as well hundreds of stakeholders, and when we are talking about stakeholders, we are talking about decision makers, even older people, but not in the place of a user, but in the place where they inform us how we should to pilot a specific solution and how we should to design a specific digital solution regarding the older adults, but also regarding the health and care systems, health in the way, and the care in another way. And this pilot campaign brings and wants to bring solutions to improve the main scope, of the principal scope is to bring solutions to improve the health, well-being, independence, and the autonomy of older people, and at the same time to enhance the long-term sustainability of healthcare system and the care system as well. To do that, we have a specific methodology that it was designed in the first 6 months of Shapes project, and in that methodology, we start to evaluate the needs and the interests, the priorities and gaps from older adults in their daily lives, but also from health and care systems. We need to start to analyze that in 2 different work packages, not in the work package of the pilots, but in the work package about ethnographies, about the world of the older people, and another about the socio-technical organizations, the systems, to start to create two things. First, to create personas that digital solutions should to address it, but also to create use cases and scenarios to adopt this kind of new new, or not new, but I will explain why I said new after. This kind of digital solutions. This the Shapes pilot campaign will work in 5 phases. The phase 1 is this planning and designing the pilot study, and in that phases we had a group of hardware and software, like Barbara explained. We have these different devices and softwares, and we can try and we study them in order to integrate some of them to, and for that reason I say, to create a new digital solution, and not a new technical device, but a solution that integrate different devices, different softwares and hardwares, because we have a platform who can mix all of this information provided by the different solutions. The second phase is a prototype phase, or to create mock-ups, and it's important because in the first phase we imagine scenarios, user requirements, personas, and in the second phase we should to readapt the technical and the hardwares and softwares in order to respect or to respond to the interests and needs that we planned and that we defined in the phase 1. The third phase, it's a hands-on experience. It's more or less a technical tests phase, controlled by the IT developers and the researchers. And the main scope is to prepare the phase 4 and 5. And the phase 4 is a small demonstration, and I mean it's a kind of pilot, but it's in a controlled environment with a few people. And the phase 5, it's a more important phase. It's to put the digital solutions in the real life environments, for example, in the nursing homes, also in the hospitals, but also in the homes of older people and the communities, and leaving their solution there, waiting and analyzing how the older people or the professionals works and use that solutions without help from the researcher or the IT developers. The Shapes pilot campaign is divided in 7 pilot teams. I will explore, and that pilot teams explore or try to explore all the dimensions of older people living, from the communities and homes to the medical environment, like a hospital. We have also pilot teams to create solutions to cognitive stimulation, a pilot team to create solutions to caring older people with neurodegenerative disease, and this pilot team is coordinated and led by University of Porto. One other to focus the rehabilitation at home, the physical rehabilitation, I'm sorry, and one other one to focus in the mobility and accessibility of older people. I will focus, because I know better this pilot team, I will focus in pilot team 5, just to explore the specific process that here and from science we should to provide in order to validate that solutions. The pilot team 5, as I said, is focusing in the caring, not in the caregivers or the care services, but in the caring as a whole of older people with neurodegenerative disease, like mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer, dementia. And we have pilot 4 use cases. we have one more, but I will talk a bit after. When the use cases is I support, and this is an educational online educational program to support informal caregivers to have a better care work, but also to have to reduce the caregiver burden. This is the first use case. The second one is a health pass, that is a platform that manages some clinical and health and the physical data, and we are designing a use case for this health pass that connect this this platform with a smart band in order to create an integrated care model to the domiciliary support. I mean, there will be not a nursing home, I don't remember the name, but there will be a formal caregiver who have a home care service using this health pass with a smart band. The third one is a voice assistance, is like a Siri of Apple or the Google Assistants. Is a voice assistant that is connected with the platform, also for the formal or informal caregiver, and support people with mild cognitive impairment and dementia to have a better self-care. I mean, the voice assistants alerts for some behaviorals during the days that medicine intakes. They have some instructions, for example, to call the friends or familiars. And the last one is a virtual scenarios. Is an application for, in that case, for not formal caregivers, but to the not the professionals, but to students. We are preparing. We are the medicines is a virtual scenario that have patients, virtual patients, when you can, I mean, to do some tests, digital tests. The Shapes project have another way to bring inside the technology is open call tenders, and that open call tenders is a way to include new technology inside the Shapes platform. And I want, one of these I want to give you this example. One of these in the first open call, in this pilot team 5, we include a new use case that is a brain code, that is a medical device for a cognitive impairment screening. And I decided to show you this the process, to resume the process of to pilot this brain code, because it's interesting because it's the first solution, technical and digital solution when we should to create two different types of scientific validation. A brain code is not a program, is a system that connect a software and the hardware that screen the brain. The brain is a EEG, and then after this screening there will be a team that read the signs of the data provided that from this screening and decide and write a report where the report says if the person have a cognitive impairment or not. And they win this open call. And to test this, and when we design the, I have a lot of time. When we design the pilot, we designed two different studies, and it's nice because in this scheme we can understand how the pilot can work. I mean, we have the first brain code prototype that exists. It's more or less in the market, but they wanted to be integrated in Shapes platform. And we designed a clinical trial to validate the effectiveness of the brain code results, comparing the brain code results to regular medical diagnosis and the neuropsychological tests. This is the part of the clinical trial. And at the same time, there will be another team composed by the Shapes technical partner and the company who will create the technical solution to integrate the brain code in the Shapes platform. And in the same time, if the clinical trial have some results that can improve the sensibility of the brain code, in the technical improvement, they will include this information from the clinical trial to improve the brain code solution. During that, in the clinical trial, in the first time, is including the usability and the satisfaction evaluation. That will occur. And that evaluation will happen with the patients. We are asking them if they feel safety with that helmet inside of the head, and we are asking to the clinicians if they believe in that new technology. After this time 1, and with the improved brain code, it's a prototype 2, included or integrated already integrated in Shapes platform. We will repeat the intervention with the other persons, and we will not repeat the clinical trial because we understand that the results are validated. The results from the brain code are the same from the regular medical diagnosis, but we are doing the same. We will repeat the evaluation, the usability and satisfaction evaluation, but in that time we will include the decision makers, asking them if they are available and what they think about the integration of this new brain code, the brain Shapes platform in the healthcare system. And more or less, and I spend a lot of time, and more or less this is the pilot study work in that 5 phases. This is the scheme. This is schemes to explore more the pilot, this concrete pilot study. But okay, I finalize now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for your presentation. We're a bit over time. Does anyone has any question that you want to put either to Pedro or to the entire panel of speakers? Okay, if there's no question, then thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this webinar. Thank you for all the speakers for your magnificent presentation. I hope that Shapes will go on and continue to do the great work that it is doing. And I want to remind everyone that we'll continue to have matchmakings, and we'll continue to have showcases every morning and webinars at 3 p.m. Central Europe time every day until Thursday. So you're all invited to participate. Next week, tomorrow we'll be speaking about financing instruments, namely from the public sector. So I invite you all to come, and please continue the matchmakings, and hopefully you'll be liking the event. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Powering the innovation for active and healthy aging.